Prepare to be even more disappointed. I am somebody who really supported Tulsi Gabbard, absolutely loved Tulsi, supported her during her presidential campaign. She's supposed to be anti-war, but here she is saying she's anti-war except when it comes to Israel. They could apparently, it's fine.
You mentioned American taxpayer dollars. Is there a difference between funding Israel and funding Ukraine?
Oh, by the way, let me back this up a bit. She's sitting down, this was last week, so this wasn't a long time ago. This was last week. She's sitting down with CBN News to promote her book, For Love of Country, Leave the Democratic Party Behind. So here's what she says.
You mentioned American taxpayer dollars. Is there a difference between funding Israel and funding Ukraine? Like, how do you see that exactly? I'm just curious about that.
Yes, there's a very
Because
clear
radical
difference.
Islamic extremism is what Israel is on the front lines of every day.
There is a very real difference, and using and there
Oh,
will
just so disappointing right there. Yes, big difference. I'm anti-war except.
always be with every unique challenge that we face and that unique decision that must be made. Using those two examples, are we better off increasing and escalating tensions and waging this proxy war against Russia, of which Ukraine has never had any shot at winning, increasing the likelihood of nuclear war? That is counter to and undermining our own national security. What to speak of the fact that we've spent hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars now for what purpose? For what purpose? Putin was wrong to invade Ukraine. There's no question about it. There's a lot of historical context that went into that, but the bottom line is we should have had a president who would have gone in very early and negotiated a peaceful end to that war as quickly as possible. Save lives, save American taxpayer dollars.
Okay, so we all agree with her on this. I think at least those of you watching this show probably agree with her that, or maybe you're coming to that point if you're somebody who supported the Ukraine war, you might be realizing, well, okay, maybe it's just better to negotiate this one out. They're not going to win, right? Okay, so she's saying all the right things when it comes to Ukraine and Russia.
When you look at what's happening in the war between Israel and Hamas, and it is a war between Israel and Hamas.
No, it isn't. There's actually no war. A war is between equal sides. A war was Germany, Russia, the United States, UK, France in World War II. That's a war, okay? This is an onslaught of a group of people who happen to have risen up a militia. So they've got their own militia because they're this oppressed. They're not allowed a military. So to call it a war is a joke. They're not allowed a military. They're not allowed to manufacture weapons. They do. They make their own little homemade weapons. They might smuggle some weapons in, but they're not allowed a real genuine military to defend their own sovereignty and their own border. They're not allowed that. So you can't really call it a war. It's a group of people who have been subjugated by Israel, Israel not allowing them to rise up and have any military at all. They're not allowed to defend. Think about that. They cannot defend themselves. They don't have any, that's not sovereignty. They're not a nation. A war is between nations, or a civil war between those in your own nation, right? But so this is, if anything, it would be closer to a civil war if you're going to make it a war. It's not between nations. Palestine, so many are quick to point out, especially on the pro-Israel side, they're not a nation. They never have been. They're not actually recognized as a nation. They're not allowed what nations are allowed, sovereignty and the ability to defend themselves. They're not allowed that. This is a military, a mighty military, going up against a civilian population. And in that civilian population, they have formed their own militia to defend themselves against a tyrannical government. Something that very many Americans advocate for here in the United States, especially conservative ones. The very voters she's trying to appeal to.
A radical Islamist terrorist group. This is just the latest front of this war that's been waged for a very long time between these radical Islamist terrorist groups that have been waging it militarily and ideologically. This is in our best interest, as well as all freedom-loving countries and civilization, to take on what is the greatest short and long-term threat to freedom.
And yet, Joe Biden just recently pausing weapon shipments to Israel. How do you see that? I mean, there are folks that say he's on the side of Hamas at this point.
He is acting out of fear, which is why he has failed, like previous administrations before him, to wage this counter-ideological warfare against this Islamist ideology whose goal is to establish Islamic rule over the entire world. even with what's happening in our college campuses, even knowing that this is Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, this is their objective. He refuses to call it out for what it is because he's afraid of being called an Islamophobe. And it's the same reason why he is not taking seriously the need to defeat Hamas and creating a policy that really, frankly, doesn't make any sense.
Okay. Oh boy, I cannot. I am just so. Oh, what has happened? Who got to these people? Who got to RFK and to Tulsi and to Trump, who's major Zionist, pro-Israel? Who gets to them? Are they all Epstein? Is there dirt on all of them? Are they just catering to the donors? Is it like this secret inside of the political world that if you want to be elected, you must be pro-Israel because they'll make sure you lose, not just because they'll fund your opponent, because that doesn't work with Trump, right? That's not a thing. For a lot of these candidates, that's not a real threat. Oh, you're going to try to come after me, throw me in jail. That's only going to make me more popular, right? That's what's happened to Trump. So they must have another way. It's not just funding your opponent and siding with your opponent. There's something else they're doing, something else that is making all of these politicians run scared and not call out the truth. All of these truth tellers when it comes to everything else except Israel. It is so disingenuous to call Hamas a Islamist organization that wants to create a caliphate and take over the world. No, that's like saying the same thing about Iran, and Iran's not like that either. There are groups that are like that, but they are Salafist, Wahhabi style, born and bred out of Saudi Arabia, Iran's not marching around trying to take over territory, saying that they want to create a caliphate around the world. They want their own, they definitely have a theocracy, and we're not talking about the stuff that happened with Iran tonight because we're short on time, and I want to kind of wait and see if more information comes out on the helicopter crash and whatnot. So, but they are a theocracy. They live in a society. They are governing their society in a way where they think maintains a certain moral character for their nation. Something many people talk about here in the United States, that we're letting moral decay happen throughout our society, and we have to curb it somehow. That's the Iranian Ayatollahs thinking and the people in power, the religious people in power there. But you wouldn't call them, they're not like ISIS. They're not like Al-Qaeda or any of these other groups, Boko Haram, that are going around trying to actually create a caliphate. Hamas, women are not forced to wear hijabs. They would like women to, but they don't force it. They're not trying to spread and convert people, convert or die or we'll kill you. That's not their ideology, and it's never been their ideology. Are they extremely religious? Are they not a fundamentalist, but they are a very conservative Islamic religious political party and movement? Yeah, they are. They are. But are they trying to create caliphates and take over the world? No. What they want is freedom for it's to be debated. I think that there's a lot of people inside of the Hamas. It's a political organization, just like any other political organization, which means it's corrupt. We can all pretty much agree all political organizations are corrupt. Hamas is no different. So you've got this Hamas organization that a lot of the people in power probably do feed off of the conflict. They probably make a lot of money off of the conflict, so they like keeping the conflict going. But the Palestinian people who are fighting, the militia groups that have risen up that fight for Hamas or for the PIJ or any of these other organizations inside of Palestine, they're rising up because they want freedom for their people. They're sick of being oppressed. They're not given equal rights. They're not given sovereignty. They're not given anything that resembles being an actual nation, and they're just under the thumb of Israel. They're not even allowed electricity like we are allowed electricity, or running water, or chips, or cookies, or crayons, or macaroni, or anything. I mean, they're just a subjugated group of people, and yet she's saying, oh, no, but it's these radical Islamists. That's what we're fighting. No, you're not. You're fighting a group of kids that grew up under oppression. They're now 18, 19 years old. They've known nothing different except being subjugated by Israel, and they're angry, and they took up a gun, and they want to fight back for their freedom. That's what you're dealing with. not somebody that says you better convert or die to my religion or else. These kids are fighting because they want more than 4 hours of electricity a day. That's what they want. That's what they're fighting for. I would fight for that too, to be quite honest with you. I think all of us would. I think any real red-blooded American, if we were suddenly under the thumb of some foreign government and they came along and said, hey, by the way, you're not allowed to have more than 4 hours a day of electricity, or you get running water 3 days a week, my guess is a lot of Americans would pick up their guns and revolt. That's what my guess would be. And they would be labeled terrorists, and the foreign country would try to stamp down on that, or even our domestic country at times, it seems. And they would be labeled terrorists, and we'd have to defeat this MAGA ideology, right? We'd hear this over and over again. And it's really just people that are being told they're not allowed to live a good life. They're not allowed to prosper. They're not allowed to. These young kids grow up knowing they have no opportunities for anything anywhere. They've been robbed of any sort of ability to get a job, have a career, build a home, have a family. All of that's gone. And instead, they just have to live in this land that they know that the Israelis are salivating over and eyeing and wanting for themselves, and saying that this is going to be land for Jews and not for you. And we're going to do whatever we can to drive you out of the land. And it's gotten to a point where they're doing it in a genocidal way, But here's Tulsi Gabbard, supporting the war, anti-war Tulsi Gabbard. Well, I guess I should be fair. She could still be called anti-war, because like I said, I don't believe it's a war that is going on between the Israelis and the Gazan people. It's an onslaught. It's a slaughter. It's a genocide. So, maybe she's still anti-war, but she's pro-genocide. Hey guys, thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen show, which you could catch just by heading to that link down below, KimIversonShow.com. You can watch the full show from what you just watched, or you could catch the full show live Monday through Friday, live streams. 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you then. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Never miss an episode. Never miss a clip. Never miss a segment. Thanks, guys.